Hi, welcome to Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. That's the name of this channel. And my name is Frank. We are going through the book of Joshua. We go through a chapter in the Bible a day. And today we're in Joshua chapter 8. Yesterday we saw a guy, or in the previous section, the previous episode, we saw a guy who was stoned, and his family was also stoned to death because of some things that he had done. But today, this chapter reminded me of when I was in high school. So when I was in high school, the plan always was to go and hang out in Sarit. Sarit was like one of the newest malls, and that's where cool people met. If it wasn't Sarit, there was another petrol station in Westlands that was it an Oilib? I can't remember, but they used to have really amazing cake around there. So we used to go to Sarit a lot. But the story is not even about Sarit. The story is that on our route, there was a matatu, Route 111. So if you know, back in the day, Route 111 had really old matatus, like really old ramshackle. It's like matatus from Langata used to retire in Route 111. That's what people used to say back in the day. And they were really old. But I remember when I was in high school, must have been Form 3 or Form 4, there was a matatu that came to that route. It was called House of Praise. The two things about House of Praise is that it was new. And then number two, they used to play gospel music all the time. Yani, back in the day, there was this artist called Chevelle Franklin. I don't know if you guys are... Anyway, yeah, she was like amazing, and she used to be so good. And they used to play her music and everything. So what used to happen is we used to go to the bus stop and stand there and wait for House of Praise. Like sometimes we'd be standing there and it passes going the opposite direction, but we're like, wacha iende tu, si itarudi. Before then, there was no Mishuki rules or whatever. So you are like, I know I'm going to Tao, and this ride has to be in House of Praise because the music is nice, the matatu is cool, and you want to come out of it in town and be like, oh, I came here through House of Praise. But there are these days when you'd be like either late or you're in a hurry and you go to the bus stop, you wait 30 minutes. Imagine we used to wait 30 minutes for a matatu. Watch out this Uber thing of 5 minutes away. 30 minutes you're at the bus stop. You don't even know where the matatu is. It was really an act of faith. You're waiting. And then you wait there 30 minutes, 35, 45. Now you're like, okay, I really need to go. And you get into the next matatu that comes, one of those ramshackles for Route 111. And you go with this and then you come from wherever it is that, you got in. You go to the next stage. Well, you're in the next stage because all those old matatus always used to have space. So they stop in every bus stop to park up. And when you're waiting there, you wait for like 3 minutes. And then as you're waiting, guess what happens? House of Praise comes from the back. It was just like 5 or 3 minutes away, and you left the stage just before it came. That time you've already paid, so you can't come out of this old matatu. And if you remember being in high school, you always just had enough money for the day. So you can't be like rich and be like, hata nimeshuka, hata niende nipande House of Praise, hata msinirudishie. No. You have to now survive in that old matatu all the way to town, take longer than you needed to take, and no music. Or if they had music, they were playing reggae. And I find reggae it's okay. There are people who love reggae, so I won't say what I find reggae to be, lest you unsubscribe from someone else's channel while I'm there. I'm not going to do those things. And that story, I remember that story because of what happens here in Joshua chapter 8. In Joshua chapter 8, it is so interesting that a guy has died in Joshua chapter 7 because he stole things, he took things he was not meant to take. In Joshua chapter 8, God comes and commands Joshua. See, now the guy has been killed and Israel has been forgiven for his sins. And God tells them, now go back and fight that city, the city of Ai, or Ai, depending on whether you come from Kao land, it's Ai, but the rest of us, it's Ai. And God commands them and he says, now go back and fight that city again. And this time they go, they fight, they destroy the city, And guess what God commands them to do? That's what I want us to read. Joshua chapter 8. We're going to read very simple verse. This is what it says. Joshua chapter 8. I'm going to read one verse. And it says this. It says, verse 2, you shall do to Ai its king as you did to Jericho and its king, except that you may carry off their plunder and livestock for yourselves. Set an ambush behind the city. Yani, I'll only read one verse today, just for you to see that in Joshua chapter 7, somebody died for stealing things that just a chapter away, God says, in this city now when you go and carry all the plunder for yourselves. Like, I am looking at this chapter and I'm seeing what and how many times has impatience cost me of the blessing of God? How many times have I walked myself out of the blessing of God and went to sort myself out? And just as I'm engaged in sorting myself out and making my own way, I see God make a way and I'm like, I wish I wish I can waited just one chapter. Like the guy would be alive. I wish the guy just waited a little bit for the next fight, because he'd have taken the same things he was meant to take without the wrath of God, with the permission of God. And this chapter reminds me to wait. To wait. Not to let impatience cost me life and blessings, because that's exactly what it did for Achan. Like, he was one battle away from the very things and the plunder that he wanted to take for himself a few chapters ago. That's what I saw in this chapter. God commands and says, in this city now, this time when you go, take the plunder for yourselves. I wish this guy was alive to take it, but he was nowhere to be seen. And the thing I find here is I find myself asking, how many times do I need to wait for God to accomplish the very things he needs to accomplish? How many times do I need to stop organizing my own miracles? We remember that story in Genesis when Sarah and Abraham had waited for a child for so long. And they waited and waited and waited. And they saw like, okay, God is not moving. What did they do? Sarah went and organized, spoke to Abraham, and he was like, take my servant girl. Let's make a son, because God has taken so long. Now let's make a son for ourselves. And that's how Ishmael was born with a servant girl that was called Hagar. And there are so many times I find myself in life organizing my own miracles, because I'm like, God is taking too long. But this chapter gives us a preview. It helps us to see that God was just one battle away from allowing them to do what Achan did for himself. The cost of sin is what killed him, but in this chapter we are seeing the cost of impatience. We are looking in a preview and seeing if this guy had only waited one more battle, he'd still be alive. This devotion for today and this takeout for today is for anyone who's in a waiting period. Maybe you've been waiting for God to answer a certain prayer, and you've waited and waited and waited. And you're in a place where now you're considering and you're like, let me try other ways. Maybe God has been saying, I'm going to give you a job. And now you're gotten to the place where like, I've seen people bribe and get jobs. Here's my turn to do the same because I've waited. Some of us are in seasons where we've waited for, there's breakthroughs for our businesses. And when you started out, you made a vow before God and you're like, I'll never bribe for business. I'm going to stand through. And now you're at the place where you're almost bulking and you're like, God, I've seen what people who bribe get. And God comes, and here we see that God was just a battle away. Maybe God is just one tender away from blessing you the right way. Don't bulk. Don't bulk. Let me also speak to many people who have been waiting on marriage for so long, and you're like, hey, we laugh normally because we're like, the longer you wait, the shorter your list grows, and maybe you've revised your list and you've reached a point where you're like, no, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm not even coming here with any expectation. And I just wanted to remind us today that sometimes God is just one more chapter away from answering your prayer the right way. Just wait on God. God is faithful. God is so faithful to do things the right way. God does not need our facilitation for miracles to happen. Like we go behind the back end and do some ingenious things. No. Let's stop engineering our own testimonies and wait for God to bless us the right way. Achan would have been alive with the same possessions and even more. But he was just one step away from letting God do the right thing for him. And he decided to do it himself. Wait, be patient, let God do his thing. I hope that today has been a blessing to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Wherever you're joining us from, let us know. Click down here and say, I'm joining you guys from this and this and that place. Share this message with somebody, especially somebody who is in a waiting season. And they need to be reminded that God will come through for them the right way. Share it with them. God bless you. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. And see you in chapter 9. Bye.